I'm ready.
Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 185 with Dan Christensen from Bureau Veritas. And I will probably struggle saying Bureau Veritas throughout the whole episode, Dan. So if you could tell us just a couple things about yourself, and then we'll just get cranking right away and start talking about the state of industrial hygiene.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, David. It's great to have the opportunity to be on this side of the interview. Um, I am an industrial hygienist by background and training, though I was not a traditional student. I was late going to college. I was 30 when I graduated, but my IH background is in a bachelor's level program at a Utah State. And we I got out of school and went right into heavy industry in the coal mining world, and it's been a whirlwind since then. I've done consulting, and now I work for Bureau Veritas in their industrial hygiene laboratories.
Oh, awesome, Dan. Awesome. So I think I'd like to speak a little bit about the state of industrial hygiene. I'm at the point that I haven't done that many samples recently for airborne and for noise and all that kind of stuff then. But my big thing is that I've been doing a lot of wipe samples for lead and silver out there,
Okay.
and so it looks like the machinery is getting a lot more precise. Like at one point, I think it was. They could never say it was at non-detect, but the lowest that they could go, I think, was like 2 micrograms per wipe, and now I think it's down to about 1 microgram per wipe. So it's really come a long way, I think. Could you also shed some light on it from your angle, like we're running all those different labs out there?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like just in the 25 years or so that I've been in this sort of industry, um, the regulations have changed. The consensus groups have changed. The standards continue to get lower as we find out more things about study the long-term effects of various hazards. So you've seen changes in the silica standard, both with OSHA and now with MSHA. You've seen asbestos be changed a number of times over the last 50 years, which is good. And what that requires is the ability to detect at lower and lower levels. And so that presents challenges for industrial hygiene and the practice, industrial hygienists who practice it, but also, and one of the things I'll talk about with the state of industrial hygiene is the non-industrial hygienist practitioners of safety and health and environment who end up performing industrial hygiene type work. So there is a lot of push to make things lower, which means in order to have the confidence that you're able to measure that, you've got to have the analytical ability to do so. So we're regularly revising methods, and we're getting down into the picograms. If you can
Wow.
believe that our reporting limits are getting very, very low for a lot of different compounds. So it's a continual push, and it's a technological challenge, but we continue to meet the demand where it's critical.
Mhm. Oh, good. For myself, because I'm not 100% trained in that, I feel very confident about taking a wipe sample. But if I have to do an air sample, I always call somebody in. So I've done a lot of air samples for arsenic and phosphorus and sulfuric acid and all that kind of stuff then. But I never felt because I was never classically trained in that. I mean, I've been to a couple of courses and hands-on stuff. It's not quite the same as really having that good core background. So I'll do the wipe sampling, but I'll bring in somebody else for the air sampling and like the really difficult stuff. Mhm.
It's interesting. Even hygienists that are classically trained, they will usually. I know I was this way, and I've seen it in many others, so I'm not going to paint it to too broad of a brush. But we'll move into more of a managerial program administration type role, and the air sampling and the pumps and the dosimeters is kind of seen as the entry level. This is how you really learn the state of the practice, kind of like a apprentice or a journeyman before you become a master. So right as we get really good at doing that kind of monitoring, most hygienists tend to stop. So, the good news is it's not terribly complicated, but there are some things that you really need to get guidance on. So even I work for a couple of laboratories with Bureau Veritas that have about 2,000 different compounds that we have methods for. And there's no way I can keep up with, what's changing. And so people will ask me questions from a sales perspective, and I will go right to the lab and say, this is what I think, this is what I remember. Can validate my idea, or has something changed? Is the media different? Is this now better to run on passive rather than active? Because it's at the lab level that people really have the cutting edge information. So there is, whether you're not classically trained in industrial hygiene or whether you're a 30-year industrial hygienist, it always pays to talk to the lab that you're using just to verify that you're using the best method and the best currently available practice.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I always like to make sure that the lab has been certified, to all the standards out there. And I don't want to focus on cost and be so focused on cost that I found a lab that maybe is not to that standard, because you do have to present your data. You just can't take a sample, keep it to yourself, not bother to tell anybody or publish it, but only if you feel good about it, you tell people.
I used to, and maybe I'm biased now because I work for a laboratory. I used pretty much all of the major labs throughout my career at some point. And the level of quality with the AIHA accredited labs is good.
Right, right.
However, one of the things that I found out is that data quality does matter, as you mentioned. And when I was a consultant for 6 years, though I ran the industrial hygiene division, the bulk of the work that we did at that firm was emergency response. And with emergency responses, you tend to have a higher threshold or a lower threshold for litigation. So you tend to end up in litigation with an emergency much more than you do on the occupational side, right?
Oh, interesting.
Unless it's something that's significant. But that really opened my eyes to the importance of data quality from a perspective of, have you collected enough data? Have you
Mm,
got data that you can rely on in a litigation type situation? And so that's where you start to look at, okay, here's a handful of labs, and they're all on the AIHA accredited list. What separates them?
mhm.
And that's when you start to ask some of those questions. Well, how long have they been in business? How long, are they recently accredited? Are they have they been accredited for 50 years, like our two laboratories? Our laboratories were they were Natalsco and Clayton, which used to be like the big dogs back in the day, and BV acquired them, and those core capabilities still remain and have this long-term history of doing quality industrial hygiene work, and it's been tested and been challenged, and it is very well seen in the industrial hygiene world as far as data quality.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I know that a couple times when I've done these samples that I had to have a minimum sampling time, and of course you look at your pump and you know all that kind of stuff. Then just to really make sure, you just can't say, "Well, I turned it on, I pressed start." I must be gathering a sample in someplace.
Yeah, but I've had the pleasant opportunity, and I say that with a smile, of being deposed and being interrogated in a room of lawyers with your team's work up on the screen and going through the field notes, and okay, what was written down here? Why is this scratched out? Why is this written this way? And fair enough. They're looking for opportunities to challenge your data, and so data quality is a huge issue, from your own collection information, as you say, to the laboratory that you're using, and then they're going to question the decisions you made based off that information or didn't base off that information. So yeah, it's a crazy world when you get into the litigation hot seat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I want to go ahead and backtrack and talk about how important it is to call the lab to know if they can tackle the method that you're just um let's call it proposing, and maybe they know a better method, a better style. something that would give you more accurate results out there. Like there's a lot of different samples, ways to sample for lead. A lot of different samples. I mean, like NIOSH sampling type methods and all that. But which one is really going to help you out to be the most accurate out there? So I think in talking to the labs, it really helps you out to then also say, I can go back, I can look up that standard. So my pump's got to be, 1.9 liters a minute, whatever the deal is and all that stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's good to verify too with the lab if you want to deviate. You may say, hey, I've looked at the NIOSH method and it has a recommended sampling volume. What happens if I go over that? Or what happens if,
mm,
this task just isn't going to be that long? How much do you need in order for me to get enough volume for you to hit a reporting limit that I can use? Because if I send you data back and there's a reporting limit that's above your action level or above your OEL, that's a useless data point to you. Now you've burned time and energy on the resources of getting the analysis, going out in the field, collecting the data, and then you got a result that doesn't help you make a decision. You can't use it. And so talking to the lab ahead of time and saying, look, if I need to do X or Y and it varies from this, what might my result be? Or if I want to make sure my reporting limit is below the published action level or OEL or whatever the standard is you're using to make your decision, how can I be sure that my reporting level will get there? And the labs can help you make that decision. They won't tell you what to do. They will give you the options and tell you what the
right.
pluses and minuses are. But if there is, for example, if there is a different detector, you may have the type of analysis for the method, but there may be a different detector that can give you a better specificity for the situation you're describing. And that's when they can make the recommendation to say, oh, you should look at this with mass spec, or you should look at this with a different detector. So sometimes it's not just the analytical method itself, but also the detector that's used that the lab can make or give you the options to make a better decision based on the scenario. So always talking to the lab is a great idea.
Right, right, right. I was always a little bit scared to try and deviate from it, that I was always trying to understand my parameters, like my low end, my high end, I can never deviate. I can never, I got to get it just right. Well, just right as much as I can, of course, because there's always that little deviation. You hope people, are wearing it at their collar and their breathing zone the whole time, and all that. And I get it. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes people are moving the pump to really get down to do maintenance and do stuff, So it's not always a 100% perfect scenario out there.
Yeah, always challenges with that. I mean, I don't know how many times someone brought me a pump train. They're like, I found this in the bathroom. Like, yeah, hey, all right, I guess that sample's done.
Like,
Like, or or you get the dosimeter back after a 3-day weekend, and you can see that it ran the whole weekend, and you can see how loud the radio was in the car when they drove home from work, and yeah, those are always the things that happen in our world that we have to manage. Data gathering is an imperfect practice, but there's certainly things we can do to get the value out of that effort and that capital we spend. But we talked earlier before we started talking about the lab stuff about the state of industrial hygiene, and I alluded to people who are not industrial hygienists performing industrial hygiene work. That's one of the things that I think that I see happening in the industrial hygiene world. I've had a couple of LinkedIn posts about the state of industrial hygiene and like the AIHA membership, the American Industrial Hygiene Association. For those that don't know, it's the professional body for industrial hygienists in the United States. In 2000, their membership was 13,000, and today it's just under 9,000. So we've seen a
wow.
30% drop in 20 years.
Mhm.
And I'm actually on an advisory board for my alma mater's industrial hygiene program. And one of the things we're seeing is that ABET accredited industrial hygiene programs are closing, stopping. There's
Oh,
less and less demand for them. The courses are struggling with the numbers of students entering them. And so there's an opportunity for us all in this health, safety, and environment world to promote industrial hygiene as a practice. to get as many people into it because not that it's a bad thing for generalists to perform industrial hygiene, but those classically trained industrial hygiene specialists are becoming fewer and farther between. And we really need the sharp, in-depth trained industrial hygienists to help make sure that those that are practicing and helping practice are doing the best work on behalf of the worker. So that's a big passion of mine is just pushing industrial hygiene more into the open. It has an archaic name from the 30s, industrial hygiene. What's that? You know,
Yeah, right.
um, whenever I go to the dentist, I tease my hygienist that I'm a hygienist too. As I think we're the only two that I'm aware of that are, called hygienists,
Right, right.
at least on your business card. So, I mean, there's a guy I did an interview with, Alex LeBeau, and he's a big proponent of the term exposure
Oh,
scientist. And
I know
I
him.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think there's opportunities. And when I worked internationally, we call ourselves occupational hygienists, and that helps,
Oh,
the understanding a little bit more. I don't think we've ever or we've agreed on or going to agree on the correct or new name to go by, but the more we publicize who we are and what we do and connect that with the end result of protecting workers, I think that's how we continue to raise the awareness of the importance of the profession.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I didn't know what industrial hygiene was until my environmental engineering dean suggested I go talk to the guys in the biology building. And it was a bit, he was right. But yeah, so it's a challenging time. I mean, we're seeing demographic declines all across the board. Most developed countries have very low reproduction rates, and so you've got less and less people being born, so you're going to have less and less people going into college, and so by definition across the board you'll have lower numbers, total numbers, probably it's still the same percentages, but total numbers of people going into the field, and so we're transitioning through the baby boomers right
Mhm.
now. People in Gen X like me are actually starting to knock on the potential door of retirement. So, the millennials, the Gen Ys, who's the other ones, the Gen Alphas, and there's one in between there. I forget. Anyway, those new generations coming up, we need to make sure that we're communicating with them and that we're taking the opportunity to reach out and advance the profession.
Right, right, right. Well, and that's one of the reasons why that I had started this is that I hate to say that I'm old, but I just see where if somebody can profit from my pain out there about learning the different strategies and techniques and just different things out there. I mean, I'm trying to impart as much knowledge as I can, too. And it does seem kind of like a weird thing, because some people, of course, are really into it, and some people aren't. Um, and I've also kind of wondered if just because we have less and less industrial manufacturing in our country, we just have less and less people even thinking about trying to do those things. And it's more of a computer farm and a cube farm mentality nowadays too. So that might play a little bit into like the downturn of the industry.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you hit on something there. There is a bit of a transition. We're more of a service economy, more software related, and I think that just shifts the balance of the risks. There's still infrastructure that has to be done. It can't be outsourced. Extractive industries, quarrying, cement, forestry products. A lot of that stuff can't be outsourced.
Right.
So while manufacturing can leave, your primary industries will still exist. Manufacturing, automobiles may decline, but we're actually starting to see a return of, because of the geopolitical risk of circuit boards and computer chip manufacturing coming back to the United States.
Hmm.
So there's always a bit of give and take and push and pull with those types of things, but ergonomics will become a bigger issue for us. Heat stress is anybody that works outside. there's still going to be, even when I worked oil and gas, one of my similar exposure groups was the guys who ran the landscaping equipment around the facility to keep it clear of, trees and brush, and
Hmm.
the carbon monoxide from their gas powered equipment, hand arm vibration, noise, and
Hmm.
heat, being out in the tropical sun all day. So yeah, there's still going to be a role for us. The mix may
Oh yeah,
change,
yeah,
but
right. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's definitely out there. I just think like you said, it's in that transition time at this point then. So if you have a
yeah.
couple more seconds, let's talk about the different types of sampling equipment that's out there. I only know of the traditional pump, but when I look at catalogs, I haven't used this stuff, but when I look at catalogs, it seems like there's a lot of different options out there.
I'm like you. I've been separated from the equipment side of things since about 2018,
Mhm.
but I do like to go to the shows, the expos, and try to see what's new. And you know, early in my career, I got an interesting invite from one of the equipment manufacturers to sit on their customer advisory board, and for really it was two meetings. But what we talked about was kind of like, where do you see this equipment going? And we talked about things like Bluetooth connection,
Hmm.
so we could read things remotely. Because if you were going to, say, measure down into a confined space, you had to either lower tubing in there and then calculate how long it should take for that air to come up the tube to your meter until
Hmm.
you read it, or you lower the meter down there and then try to bring it up real fast and read it. You know,
Yeah.
I, but now we live in this world where, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and the connectivity, you're seeing an explosion in wearable monitors, heat stress monitors. I've seen dosimeter badges that just flash to give a visual warning instead of, what traditionally would be, if you wore a dosimeter, it records your exposure and you read it later. So that's not as reactive. That's more of a delay. And so there's really cool technology coming out there. I'm having trouble keeping up with it. I'm getting old, right? Like I can't use my iPhone as well as my kids can. But it's heartening to see that we're embracing the new technologies that are coming out and it hitting the industrial hygiene field.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I think you really hit onto something. I know that when I did things like confined space now, I never had to worry about flammables. Mine was always acids and that kind of stuff then, but we were always like, all right, let's put the tube down. Let's do the timer. Let's see what comes back and all that stuff then that, you know, we always thought that it would be awesome that if we somehow had that automatic detector and not just when you're like initially doing that stuff then, but you kind of think about as somebody goes down, they're stirring up whatever they're stirring up. That maybe the atmosphere, but when you started, is not the same as kind of when you get going, of course, So it would really be great to have that instant, as opposed to if that delay was, 30 seconds or a minute, whatever that was. Hmm.
Yeah, no, it's one of the scariest times in my life. I was working in the oil and gas business, and we had global business units. And it was like a Saturday night. I get a call on my work phone, and it is the floating platform off the shore in Australia, and they have an inspector who is about to go in to inspect one of their oil storage, um, I guess, a bunker, but just a big empty space.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're just going to go down this manway, down a ladder, and he wanted to know if the atmosphere was okay for this guy to go in. I'm 33 hours away from this location, right? Like, if I
Right.
left today, and trying to walk somebody through that, as a young hygienist, I'm dealing with a situation I was never trained for. And ultimately, we just pulled the safety card and said, if we don't know, we're not letting an inspector go down in that hole until we can get a proper plan. We're not going to do this over a phone call from, 8,000 miles away.
Right.
We're just going to put a stop work on this and come up with a plan. And that's what we did. But those are the kind of situations you can find yourself in where, somebody wants to, well, we waved it over the opening and it said it's fine. Like, what is it 60 feet down and 300 feet that way? You know,
Right,
well, we've
right.
been ventilating for 3 days. That doesn't tell me anything. What's the volume? What's the speed of the fan? How, what's the air change per hour? I don't know any of that information, and I can't make that decision over the phone. So, yeah, now interesting challenges in the career, but I never thought I would see the day where, we have the potential of having a robot drone fly or walk a device into a hazardous area before a first responder goes in, or we need to go and rescue a worker and we need to check the atmosphere before we send live people in to go. We live in that world now, and it's really, really cool.
Wow, wow. That would be really, really neat. Now, it would probably be good to hold a drill a couple times and just really make sure that everybody understands the technology. I mean, it's awesome to have somebody out there who knows that, but I wouldn't want to be so dependent on only one person who knows that stuff, of course, too, at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very neat, very neat. So we have just a couple more seconds. Um, and I hate to
Yes,
have
sir.
you kind of journey back in time, but let's journey back in time. Has anybody asked you, how do I sample for X, like XYZ, like input? Just tell me like whatever kind of chemical it was. It didn't really have a PEL or a REL or a AC, a T, a TLV, but you suspected that it still wasn't good for you. I don't know if I'm giving you too much of a scenario or
Um, more what happens to me rather than being asked. Well, odors all the
uh,
time.
oh
I,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
remember we had a floor, right, and this floor of our office building had been renovated, and they were opening up the floor, but protect the floor from all the foot traffic of bringing in all the furniture and everything. They laid these slightly adhesive plastic sheets all over everything. Well, as soon as they peeled those up, it left adhesive behind on the floor, and it quickly became very dirty because the adhesive grabbed all the dirt off everybody's shoes. So brand new building floor, and now it's an embarrassing mess. So the cleaning crew came in overnight and they hit it all with like a D-limonene orange, solvent, adhesive solvent.
Mhm.
And when the workers came in the next morning, it was just this horrible, odor and of orange peel and strong chemical clean, and sick building syndrome is a thing. We've had these issues where paint will off gas, carpet will off gas, formaldehyde. You have these issues with new, and so now we have this additional layer of we added this product, and somebody just, I think it was my boss, dropped an SDS on my desk and said, "We need to measure for this." They put it on the carpet up on floor whatever, and I was like, "Yeah, you can't measure for this." Like we could do VOC monitoring,
Right, right.
but I'm like, essentially what you got to do is you got to ventilate, and anybody that's uncomfortable, I'm like, I don't see that it's going to be hazardous. It's not reaching a flammable level or anything like that. It's going to be annoying.
Hmm.
That's why we make cleaning chemicals smell, so that people recognize that it's been applied, and and to make it pleasant.
Right,
Um, and so there was no fixing it or measuring it, and no analytical method. Even if I could find a lab that could measure D-limonene,
right.
by the time I assembled equipment and media and everything, the smell was going to be gone. So um, I've been afflicted by, hey, we have an anomalous odor. Can you come and measure it?
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
so I'm not the stinky smell guy, but one thing I will say about odor thresholds is that odor thresholds are incredibly variable with the individual.
Oh yes, oh
And,
yes,
and
yes.
you know this if you've ever visited a farm
Hmm.
and you're like, man, it stinks. The farmer's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's gotten used to it. He's had some olfactory fatigue set in. So just
Exactly.
one of those fun things that happens in the career.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey Dan, so we are bumping up on time. If you could take a few seconds, let everybody know how they can find you, connect, if there's any follow-on questions, all that good stuff.
All right. Well, I'll say it like this. I'm at the AIHA show. I walk away from our booth and I come back to the booth and my team says, some guy on here came by here and said, tell that Dan Christensen to get off of LinkedIn. And I guess it's just seeing a lot of content from me, right?
Mhm.
And that's probably the number one place that you'll find me. I'm Dan L. Christensen on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting about my sales team's activities, the stuff that Bureau Veritas is doing, and also just industrial hygiene, promotion. I'm a big fan. It's my career. I always wanted to find a way to help people, so that's where I'm at. You can find me a few other places, and kudos on you if you do. But LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. And you can always find me at my email, dan.christensen at bureauveritas.com.
Awesome, Dan. Awesome. And keep on doing it, Dan. You know, your content is really good, and that's what made me reach out and find you. And then of course, we've now talked. So keep
Yeah,
on doing it, Dan.
appreciate it.
Keep on doing it. So, and with
Thanks,
that
David.
episode,
Your podcast is inspiring.
oh, thank you, Dan. Thank you. And with that, episode 185 is complete with Dan Christensen of Bureau Veritas. Everybody have a great day.